Jason hated late nights at the office. He hated the silence. Worse, he hated the way the shadows seemed deeper, more profound after the stroke of midnight. But his boss needed those reports, and Jason needed the job. He sighed, the sound loud in the stillness. His fingers flew across the keyboard, a practiced rhythm. Deadlines loomed, but he could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Just a few more emails, one last report, and then he could finally escape this tomb of glass and steel. He leaned back, stretching, listening to the satisfying pops of his tired muscles. Outside the window, the city that never sleeps continued its nocturnal symphony of sirens and distant rumbles. It felt miles away, a different world entirely. Jason packed his things, a familiar weight in his backpack. He walked towards the elevators, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous lobby. As he reached the elevator bank, something caught his eye, a flicker of light, a subtle movement in the dimly lit panel. He stopped, squinting at the elevator buttons. There, nestled between the 12 and 14, was a button he'd never noticed before. 13. He was sure it hadn't been there before. He rubbed his eyes, but the button remained a shiny, metallic anomaly. Was there always a 13th floor? He'd worked in this building for years, and he could have sworn there were only 12. Curiosity, and perhaps a touch of morbid fascination, tugged at him. Jason hesitated, then reached out and pressed the button. The elevator shuddered, groaned, and began a slow, reluctant ascent. The air inside the elevator was heavy, stale like a forgotten tomb. The gentle hum of the motor was the only sound, a low, rhythmic drone that seemed to vibrate in his teeth. He watched the numbers tick by, each floor announced by a soft chime that echoed eerily in the confined space. The air grew colder, or perhaps it was his imagination. He felt a shiver run down his spine, a primal instinct telling him to get off this elevator, but he was already rising past the 10th floor. He told himself it was just an old building, probably just his imagination playing tricks on him, but deep down a sense of unease began to fester in his gut. The lights flickered, once, twice, then plunged the elevator into darkness. Jason gasped, fear clawing at his throat. The elevator lurched, throwing him against the mirrored wall. He slammed against the hard surface, the impact knocking the air from his lungs. As suddenly as it began, the elevator lurched back into motion. The lights sputtered, then returned to their dim glow. Jason stood there, heart pounding, trying to catch his breath. He looked around, his eyes wide, searching for the source of the disturbance. There was nothing. He was alone. He tried to rationalize, to tell himself it was just a power surge, a malfunction. But the silence was deafening, broken only by the thump, thump, thump of his own heart. Section 5. Whispers in the Dark. The elevator continued its ascent, agonizingly slow now. The air grew colder, the metallic scent of ozone filling his nostrils, and then he heard it. A faint whisper, barely audible above the hum of the motor. A voice, or something like a voice, ethereal, chilling. He strained to listen, every nerve ending on high alert. The whisper came again, closer this time, a sibilant murmur that sent shivers down his spine. It seemed to come from the very walls themselves, from the air around him. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was a voice filled with sorrow, with longing, with an ancient, unfathomable sadness that seemed to seep into his very bones. Just when he thought he could take no more, the elevator shuddered to a halt. The doors stuttered open, revealing a hallway bathed in a soft, warm light. A wave of relief washed over him, so intense it made him lightheaded. He stumbled out of the elevator, his legs feeling weak and shaky. The hallway was long and narrow, the walls lined with doors. It looked like any other floor in the building, but the air here felt different, lighter somehow, more alive. He could still feel the lingering chill of the elevator, but it was fading now, replaced by a cautious sense of hope. He started down the hallway, drawn by an unseen force. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he knew he had to find it. Perhaps it was an exit, a way out of this nightmare, or maybe, just maybe, it was an answer. As he reached the end of the hallway, The lights flickered once and went out, plunging him back into darkness. The air, which had been warm and inviting just moments ago, turned instantly cold, as if a window had been thrown open to the Arctic. He stumbled back, fear, a cold fist clenching around his heart. "Hello," he called out, his voice a thin, reedy sound in the oppressive silence. There was no answer, only the echo of his own voice mocking him in the darkness. He was trapped. The realization hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath and leaving him gasping in the cold, stale air. He fumbled in his pocket for his phone, his fingers clumsy with fear. The screen lit up, a beacon of hope in the suffocating darkness. But there was no signal. Of course not. He was trapped in a steel and concrete coffin, buried alive in the heart of the city that never sleeps. He thought he was alone. He wasn't. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he began to make out shapes around him, shadowy figures that seemed to shift and writhe in the periphery of his vision. They were there, just beyond the reach of the faint light from his phone screen, watching him, waiting. A cold dread crept over him, settling deep in his gut. He wanted to scream, but terror had robbed him of his voice. He was frozen in place, caught in the grip of an ancient, nameless fear. The phone slipped from his numb fingers, the screen going dark as it clattered to the floor. He was plunged into absolute darkness, the blackness so complete it felt like a physical weight pressing down on him, stealing his breath, his thoughts, his very will. He ran then, blindly, desperately, his hands outstretched before him, scraping against rough walls, tripping over unseen obstacles. But there was no escape. He was lost in a labyrinth of darkness, the air thick with the weight of unseen eyes and unheard whispers. The elevator, with its flickering lights and chilling whispers, seemed a distant memory now, a fleeting glimpse of normalcy in a world gone mad. He was lost, adrift in a sea of shadows, and he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he was not alone. The whispers were closer now, surrounding him, taunting him, their voices like icy fingers trailing across his skin. They were calling to him, beckoning him deeper into the darkness. And as much as he fought against it, as much as he longed for the familiar comfort of light and sound, he knew with a terrifying certainty that he was powerless to resist. The darkness had claimed him.